This morning we had a number of very strong speakers. The minister actually gave us a very encouraging backdrop of how the government is thinking in terms of, in a way, policy innovation going forward. And then, of course, Pak Mokhtar gave us a very insightful presentation about how he sees Indonesia's property development being a locomotive for the growth of the economy. This session is focused on the secrets of the property sector, and we have three individuals here who I think can share their insights on how, over their careers, you have seen the property sector develop, and what may be some of the, nuggets of information that you can provide to our audience. So, Pak Darmono, maybe if I can start with you. I think you were instrumental in Jababeka in terms of developing the whole concept of industrial estates in Indonesia. And you've also, of course, expanded across many different sectors of the property industry. If you can just tell us a little bit about how you started off and what gave you the inspiration to get involved in the industrial estate sector, and maybe, some of the things that you had to grapple with and the insights that you've got from doing these projects.
Thank you, Shoeb. Well, I started to be involved in the property industry in 1982. Before that, I was working for ICI, a multinational company from UK, selling chemicals, colors, textile colors to the textile people in Indonesia. So they were my customers. And we were all talking about how we, the manufacturing people, creating jobs. And then those workers buy property from Pak Ciputra. So that was the inspiration why then we were gathering together to start a property industry in Bintaro. So that's what how we began to go into a property industry. But being an industrialist, later on we set up an industrial estate which was not in competition with Pak Ciputra and the other developers. So our motto is always how we create demand. Because if we compete in the existing demand, then it's always bloody. I do not like competition. I like monopoly.
And in terms of the industrial estates, can you share why you went into Cikarang and what you saw there?
Well, after developing Bumi Bintaro Permai for 5 years, we thought the learning curve was enough. After developing 10 hectares, I said to my colleagues, my best friend Pak Hadi Raharja, who was manufacturer for textile, the largest in Bandung at that time, I said to him that 10 hectares and 1,000 hectares, the energy spent is the same. So let's do 1,000 hectares. And for 1,000 hectares, we need to create our own buyers by starting with an industrial estate. And at that time, Indonesian government wanted to relocate or invite a lot of factories from Japan, Europe, Korea, and so on to move to Indonesia, following the trend in Malaysia, Thailand, and so on. So that is what we did in 1989. That 1989 we persuaded government that private sector should be allowed to come into an industrial estate development, which is normally developed by state-owned enterprise because it involves infrastructure like water, power plant, wastewater treatment, security, road construction, and so on. So we proposed to the government that we were all manufacturing companies, people who understand what is the requirement from manufacturers from overseas about building factories in Indonesia. Because most investors, when they come to Indonesia, they have a lot of problem by buying lands, by getting the license from local government, provincial government, central government, so complicated. Red tapes was difficult even still today. So this is the problem which we think we need to support government by inviting investors to Indonesia, but giving them comfort, security, and convenience with a so-called one-stop service. So this is where we came into industrial estate, and of course, after that, we had to develop also housing for the workers. And after housing, we must build schools, we must build hospitals, we must build entertainment places, golf courses, and so on and so on. So this is a concept which can be then repeated in many areas in Indonesia by starting for creating jobs first. Either this is from manufacturing, from tourism, from mining, never mind. As long as we create something there to drive the economy, to create jobs so that there is demand for housing, there is demand for hospital, there is demand for schools, offices, and so on. This is the concept which I think now the President or even SPA before bought this concept and asked us to develop more and more township like this.
Thank you very much. So I think the insight really is from a user perspective, you understood what a user would need in terms of property, and then you provided that. So is demand creating supply, right? Papo, maybe if I can come to you now, you've also been involved in the property sector for a long time. And you've seen the growth of Indonesia and over the last 30, 40 years. What were some of your key successes? What drove you to develop what you're doing now?
Ibu-ibu, bapak-bapak yang kami hormati, kalau ditanyain key success untuk properti kita, umumnya dalam properti kita melihat dengan smart mencari lokasi dan dengan smart mencari produksi yang sesuai dengan demand yang diinginin masyarakat. Tapi saya kira kalau cuma begini masih kurang ya. Jadi kita harus mempunyai satu jiwa satria untuk berbisnis dalam properti. Semua perusahaan besar atau kecil pun pasti ada titik mulanya. Umumnya titik mula dibarengin dengan satu manajemen yang sesuai dengan bidangnya dan efektif dipakai. Ini seperti seorang bayi sudah dilahirkan, bisa jalan, bisa bicara, dan bisa lari. Tapi bayi ini perlu satu jiwa, perlu satu didikan mental dia. Tadi sejak kecil memang saya diberi sama orang tua saya satu filosofi dari Tiongkok. Itu adalah sudah beribu-ribu tahun filosofi ini yang kita kenal dengan namanya adalah Konghucu, Gongzi. Di mana Bapak saya memberitahu kita jadi manusia pakai filosofi Gongzi ini hanya ada 8 huruf. Cukup buat kamu bersih hidup, baik di keluarga maupun di bisnis. 4 kata ini kalau saya bacakan dalam bahasa Tionghoa adalah Xiaoti, Zhongxin, Liyi, Lianqi. Xiaoti itu adalah berbakti pada orang tua kita, menghormati saudara kita. Kalau kita berbisnis, kita harus menghormati orang yang sepupu kita, yang lebih tua dari kita, dan kita juga menghargai, menghormati sesama kita. Zhong Xin, Zhong itu adalah satu royalty dan setia. Dalam perusahaan saya di Pollux, kita selalu mengajarin gimana karyawan itu bisa mempunyai royalty yang tinggi terhadap atasannya dan juga setia pada atasannya, dan tentunya atasannya akan lebih royal dan lebih setia kepada CEO-nya atau ownernya. Tapi ownernya sendiri juga harus royal dan setia kepada karyawannya. Jadi semua satu perusahaan akan berjalan dengan damai dan last long. Dan semua orang-orang yang skill di bawah kita akan betah di tempat kita karena suatu kedamaian dan satu kebersamaan. Kalau sin itu ada kepercayaan. Kita boleh kalah uang, tapi selalu kita tidak mau kalah dalam kepercayaan. Biarpun kita rugi pun, asal ada komitmen, itu harus kita jalankan. Itu namanya untuk menjaga kita punya jiwa kita untuk ikutin bisnis ini. Li'i itu adalah satu sopan santun. Ya tentunya di sini saya kira sopan santun semua sudah tahu. I itu adalah satu tradisional upacara. Kita di sini harus selalu menghargai satu upacara yang diadakan oleh teman kita, biarpun tradisinya lain. Dan yang terakhir itu adalah lien sama ji. Lien itu adalah satu bersih. Kita kalau sama kita punya customer, sama kita punya partner pun, sama kita punya teman kerja, supplier kita harus jelas dan tidak ada manipulasi di antaranya, tidak ada satu kebohongan di dalamnya. Itu sangat penting karena merupakan satu bersih. Kita hidup di dunia ini bisa berdiri tegak, bisa duduk dengan baik karena kita bersih. Ji itu adalah satu ilmu malu. Kita tahulah kalau saya menyikat uangnya orang atau mengkorupsi uang orang itu saya akan malu. Itu adalah satu ilmu malu. Jadi dalam kita dagang properti pun, biarpun properti itu belum jadi, tapi orang sudah bayar, itu kita harus tahu kalau kita tidak jadi properti ini, kita akan malu terhadap semua masyarakat dan terhadap semua pembeli yang telah memberikan dana itu dan percaya pada kita. Itu 8 huruf ini selama ini saya terapkan di perusahaan kita. Dan saya lihat juga hasilnya cukup bagus, sehingga saya selalu encourage saya punya orang dan keluarga kita, jalanlah seperti ajaran papa saya, ya, yaitu ajaran filosofi Kongzi ini untuk di mana saja. Saya kira kita dagang apa saja, terhadap siapa saja, kalau bisa mempunyai jiwa satria untuk berbisnis ini, kita akan sukses di mana-mana dan perusahaan properti kita pasti akan bertahan sampai last long karena memang kita dipercaya orang.
Terima kasih Pak Po. So, just to give you the gist of what Pak Po mentioned was really the philosophy of the company starts with respect for your elders, respect for your staff, respect for your company, and the trust that you must build with your customers and your clients. That's just a gist. But it's very deep philosophy, and I think he really also puts up front the idea that in the property sector, and I think this has been borne out, you really have to think long term, and you have to think about contributing to the larger society. So, if I can come to Pak Anin now, in terms of your experience in the property sector. Of course, the Bakrie Group has also been one of what I would call nation builders in terms of creating the right environment and the projects that really bring Indonesia to the next level. I think the Kuningan project that your family has been involved in has really kind of transformed the way we see property development, especially within the city. What are some of the key learnings that you have taken from being involved in the property sector?
Thank you, Pak Shoeb. First of all, I will not claim that personally I'm an expert in property. However, one thing everybody knows that in property you can create a lot of value addition, not only as a business but also for the society. So that much we know. As a group, we have been around since 1942, and we have been going through up and downs all the time. Financial, economic, political, even natural disasters. We have seen a lot. And when it comes to property, it emanated from the core business that we had, which was infrastructure and construction. In fact, that was the first business of Bakrie Group in the 50s and in the 60s, because we believe that with the right infrastructure, then you can build a lot of things on top of it. So our experience, as you know, we have CBD in Rasuna, or satellite cities in Bogor, Sentul, Jonggol, and a lot of other developments in other areas of Indonesia. And we learn by doing, in a way that there are a lot of things to improve in many ways. But at the end of the day, I think what Pak Po, I took notes on what Pak Po shared with us. I think building trust, maintaining trust is very important. And the second thing also, you cannot be lazy. And lazy doesn't mean that you don't work per se, but it also means you gotta be creative and being up to date. Now, what's also interesting is to think about how we're gonna approach the future in property business and to a certain extent in business in general. We believe that Bakrie Group should grow with Indonesia and for Indonesia. And first thing first, I think integrated property management is very important because we know after the basic needs of food, clothing, then of course housing, we need to think also about education, health, and also entertainment, right? And I think the integrated property should also combine, as Pak Darmono mentioned, between the residential and business, and making sure that we are disciplined in investing in infrastructure. Because for business people, investing in infrastructure is not easy. It's a long-term game. So building integrated properties is very important. And the second thing, also creative financing. Especially when you have to build infrastructure, especially when you have millennials coming into the picture. I think Papo's son, Nico, mentioned to me that in India, on average, 37, 38-year-old already have housing. I think we had a lot to catch up. The vice governor is saying about down payment zero. That's one way to do it. How to make it a reality, you gotta think about it more than twice. But the idea is we gotta have creative financing on how to do it. The third thing, I think we should also think about O2O, the famous online to offline, right? Because no matter what, in Indonesia, a lot of young people, more than half below 40 years old, so making sure that you combine between the property, which is very physical and hard to replace by digital world, but also connect that to the other three that we talk about, not only education and health, but also entertainment to a certain extent. And in fact, we believe in that so much that I think, and I'll give you a couple of examples, that we will focus more on entertainment-based property. So we have a little water boom park in Jungle, in Bogor, sorry, named Jungle. It gives 1 million people every month, right? And it makes sense because we're all Polynesians. We like to, be in the water, right? So a lot of people go. But that's just one way to attract people, and you can combine it so much with media, entertainment, and so on. And lastly, I would like to mention that I think we have come to the era of partnership. In the past, because the cake is not growing too much, it's pretty much winner takes all. It's land grabbing exercise. But I think now, we come to the era of cooperation, because we can always mix and match between what we have and what we don't have, as long as we have the same vision, DNA, and especially execution. We need to fill in each other's gaps. So I think those are a couple of things that we can share. That's right.
Thank you very much, Pak Anin. One of the broader themes for this year's Indonesia Property Forum really is rapid urbanization. Now, I think, from the 50s to the 60s to today, Indonesia has come a long way in terms of urbanization. We can see the fact that, today almost half the population lives in urban areas. Pak Darmono has a vision of building 100 cities across Indonesia, and I think Pak Po is also involved in building a city in Technopolis. And of course, the Bakrie Group from the very beginning has been involved in the infrastructure. this is an interesting opportunity in terms of normally in most countries, this is the job of the government. But in Indonesia, the private sector really is providing that, that infrastructure, right? I mean, the government is a partner, but you know that the capacity of the government is not as great. So the private sector really has an opportunity, but also I think a challenge in terms of building on such a large landscape, right? But Darmono, maybe if I can come to you, and if you can share with us a little bit about your vision of these 100 cities that you want to build across Indonesia, how do you get it done? I mean, a city is not easy to build, let alone 100 cities, you know. So what is your vision and what would be your building blocks towards that?
Problem for the successful development of a project is there are three criteria which we have to consider. One, the timing. Is the timing right? Or in other words, whether God already gave his consent. So if the timing is right, then we can do this one. But the second one is that the place or the geography, is that good or not to start with? We always say in the property development it's about location, location, and location. And number three is about the people, whether the people are ready to accept development. So these three components, again, is something also if Papo mentioned about the Chinese philosophy. This is also from Confucius' philosophy, that a project can only be successful if God gives us consent, the earth is ready, and the people are in harmony. So to develop many more cities, we need actually, number one, to get the people ready to welcome investors, to become development. So in order to do that, then the best method is starting with tourism if it is in a rural area. For example, I started my project in Tanjung Lesung 25 years ago. Tanjung Lesung is actually not that far away. It's only 180 kilometers from Jakarta. But the infrastructure is poor. There was no toll road. Today still also the toll road is still under construction for the extension from Serang to Tanjung Lesung. And the area is so poor in our eyes that people have no education, no healthcare, and so on. So 25 years ago, when I visited that area, I saw a couple with 11 children. So I asked the man there, how come you have 11 children? He said, well, one coconut tree can feed one child. I have thousands of coconut trees. So this is the perception from us, from developer, also from government. These people are poor. Actually, they are not in terms of food. And then I go to the sea and saw a fisherman with a lot of fish. And can I buy some of your fish? I tried to help. And he said, no, this is not for sale. Are you hungry? Please take as many as you want. So they are not poor, right? But no education, no health care. So this is what government needs to do and help. Now, to help them, we started with a construction. And the salary or the wages they ask is much higher than Jakarta because for them, they don't actually need to work. So we have to pay them double than Jakarta standard. At night, we teach them English. Again, they ask to be paid. So how to develop this area? It's only 180 kilometers from Jakarta. Never mind Morotai. Never mind Papua, right? It's how difficult to develop outside Java. And the only way is by starting with tourism. Start with a hotel. If you have a hotel somewhere, then people dare to go there. For example, if we are invited for a remote area in Africa, then the first thing we want to do is it safe to go there? Yeah. But if there is a hotel there which provides everything in this nice building, for example, then I think we will go for 1 week maybe. And that gives us experience about the people, about the opportunity, what we can do in that area. Once we have got that one, then we start trading. Like in Bali, 50 years ago, people came to Bali to buy handicraft, to buy antiques. This is the backpacker. The backpacker came to Bali, make Bali alive. And then they come back, come and fro, and they make a profit out of this. The Balinese learn how to meet the foreigners, how to learn English, and so on and so on. It took more than 50 years to develop Bali, maybe 100 years actually. And the starting point of Bali was started by Nusa Dua area, with government form a TDC, or Tourism Development Corporation, Bali TDC. Bali TDC started Nusa Dua as the magnet for Bali development. So my vision at the time was start with Tanjung Lesung as the magnet for Banten province development. Once Tanjung Lesung is fully developed, then the whole Banten will wake up for the tourism industry. And then trading will come and manufacturing will come, because government then will build the infrastructure. Building an industrial estate is not an easy thing. You need very good harbor with high frequency of ship. You need toll road. You need good supply of power. You need good supply of water. You need good supply of gas, toll road, and human resources. So don't try to build an industrial estate outside Java when it is when you expect that everybody will come there like in Cikarang. But mining, yes, you can start with mining. But again, this is very focused. Maybe start with smelter and so on. But trying to build a full scale in a township like in Cikarang, it's very difficult to do it outside Java. So start with tourism. Start with something is strong in that area. Maybe what? If it is fishery, we start with fishing. If it is mining, we start with mining. If it is something which the local government needs, for example, hospital, we start with medical city. Something like that. So this is the concept. Of course, it's not going to happen in my lifetime. I'm just selling the idea. I hope the young generation will buy this dream and continue, because we need to create middle class, strong middle class in Indonesia if we want to become strong, like Pak Sofyan Jalil mentioned this morning. Because without creating strong middle class, how can we sustain the democracy? And democracy can only be good if there is an industrialization. And industrialization is only good if we have a strong government. And government come and go. Every 5 years, we don't know who is going to be the next president. We don't know who is going to be the next mayor, who is going to be the next governor. So private sector must come to help building these clusters, like special economic zones or industrial estate, so that we can create jobs and really help and support government in making Indonesia strong.
Thank you very much. I think, as you rightly mentioned, if the people are not ready, you can't force them. But I think your vision of how you go into remote areas with tourism is quite insightful, given that actually Indonesia has so many beautiful spots, but they're inaccessible, hard to get to, and when you do get there, you don't have a place to stay. So and you can see how the tourism industry is also taking off. I think one of the insights is, of course, everybody thinks that Bali today is a world-class tourism destination, but it did take time to build it, and it took Nusa Dua to really get it going. Pak Po, in terms of how you see the property sector going forward, I think Technopolis is going to be probably the first large-scale property development that is going to focus on R&D and research and development and innovation. Why did you think of that? What was your thinking behind creating that kind of a development?
Karena rakyat di Indonesia itu 60-70% itu adalah generasi muda. Mereka masih sangat membutuhkan satu tempat rumah untuk hidup. Mereka sudah mulai lulus dari sekolah, mereka mulai masuk kerja, dan mereka mulai mendapatkan penghasilan. Pertama-tama yang dipikirkan pasti membentuk satu keluarga yang sempurna. Tidak bisa kurang kalau tanpa ada satu rumah yang bisa dihuni dengan layak. Dan kita mengerti bahwa daerah situ memang daerah industri dan banyak sekali penduduknya di situ yang masih single dan segera akan menikah. Sehingga kita dengan berani dan dengan satu pandangan yang long term, kita membuat satu proyek yang cukup besar buat kita, buat ukuran kita di situ.
Terima kasih Pak. Pak Anin, you are basically kind of in the middle generation. I don't know, you're not a millennial, right? Okay, just checking. Yes. But you understand the millennial mindset, and you understand also where the country is heading. What do you see in terms of your own group's strategy going forward? Where will you be focusing on?
Thank you, Pak Soen. First, Pak Po also mentioned that 67% or whatever below 40 years old. So I think in the next 30 years, we're going to see a lot of excitement because these people are going to go to the working force if they are not already in the working force. And the way they live is totally different. So I think first thing first for them, the most important thing is for us to be able to keep up with them and start bringing them into the business organization sooner rather than later. Yeah. Because no matter what the traditional paradigm is, I think it's going to change. We have seen a lot of disruptions already in many verticals, whether it's transportation, commerce, travel. We're going to see more of that. So in the group, we certainly have quite challenging task going forward, right? And me, the irony is a third generation, and you know what they say. They say first found it, second built it, third bring it to the ground. Yeah. But I also like to joke that even the second generation have their fair share of restructuring. Yeah. So I'm pretty much first generation. But you can imagine that a lot of the business verticals in the group, ranging from construction and infrastructure, mining, minerals, property, media, technology, and so on. So how do we bring technology to creatively bring every verticals to the next generation? So first, I think governance is very important, right? The way we govern in the past is not the same with the way we govern in the future. More transparency. Most of the verticals are already publicly listed. But we also have to think about technology in every verticals, not only on the media side, for example. So, for example, when we talk about construction, how do we utilize the 3D printing for prefab housing, right? So that, one day we can make it, designed by very famous designers. At the same time, it's affordable, and you can replicate it, scale it quite fast. And how do you do the plantations, whether that's palm oil or rubber, the most efficient manner, right? Using technology. That's also very important, right? Because at the end of the day, the more you do that, the more sustainable the environment is, right? But really, I'm a strong believer in Indonesia because one, I don't have any other country, but I'm a strong believer because of a couple of things. Not because we look inside, but because we look outside, right? One, being 250 million people, a lot of people say, okay, whatever, but that's something, The scalability for anything you do is big. The second thing, we should be also thankful that the economy is quite balanced. 2/3 being domestic consumption and 1/3 being export-driven. I think that's a good thing, right? And if you can manage it well, almost in all of your portfolio, you just focus on those 2/3, 1/3. I think you're going to be okay. But coming back to your question, I think involving the millennials sooner rather than later in the business organizations, I think that's the right thing. And the good thing is I have some cousins who are millennials, so I guess they can show me the rope. Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much. I think if there are millennials in this room, I think you can go to him for a job now. This is a forum of discussion, so I would encourage questions from the floor to our panelists. Are there any questions at the moment? Anyone would like to ask any of the panelists? Or even share a thought or a view, or where do you think the property sector can go in the future?
Good morning, Pak Darmono. You briefly mentioned that you found that sometimes government regulation is hindering. I'm working with Colliers International, and my job is to help expats relocate to Indonesia. And the trend now is certainly that it's the most difficult time that I've seen in maybe 10 years for them to get permits to work in Indonesia. Once they get into Indonesia, then setting up companies and so on and so forth is even more challenging. So even to recruit talent to help Indonesia develop is extremely challenging at the moment. A big company such as yourselves is not a one-man show, and certainly that you need, we've talked about technology from Japan, technology from China, and how do we, not only those countries but other countries, how do we take advantage of that? But if we can't share that, and Indonesia is trying to be nationalized, keep it national, which is of course understood, but if the government is making it so difficult to take advantage of international talent, do you not see that we are hindering the development of the country? Your thoughts?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, I cannot agree more than you. So this is why I think government try to mitigate this problem by having special economic zones or industrial estate. This is where we can help the investors to get the regulation not broken but bent. Right? So this is one area where I think at the moment our president is trying to do very hard to speed up the what they call the permit, getting the license and so on. But it's never enough. So the quickest way actually to come to Indonesia is you need to have a partner, local partner. And the local partner will help you to go through all this problem or regulation. Or buy a company which is already up and running. So this is always what I suggest to foreign investors who want to come to Indonesia. First, get local partner. Number 2, buy existing ones. Or number 3, if you want to start scratch, come to an area where there is one-stop service. But overall, I agree with you. It's still difficult to get things done. But if you have partner, the partners can always help you. There are many good people here. Pak Hadi Cahyadi here, for example, he's a consultant. Go to him, you get everything done by him. Right?
Thank you. Yes.
Sir, I'm from India. For a minute I thought, hearing you, that I was back home. We have similar problems there and similar issues. But I must tell you, I want to share with you changes that is taking place in our country, perhaps not with a view to promote India, but definitely a few points can be taken from there for your consideration. If you just give me a few minutes, I'll just like to explain it, sir. Our government in the last 2 years or 3 years has really gone a lot towards opening up the economy and also doing a lot for the industry. And one more thing that they've done is they have brought in governance in this developers segment, which was lacking. And everybody was doing whatever he wanted to do, and there was no proper rules, legislation, law, etc., which was being followed. So we brought in something called the RERA, and with that, there is a lot of legislation, controls have come up, transparency has come up. All projects have to have this certification, and you have to put it up in the website. You can't even take the money that you collect from your clients or anywhere else. Only 70% should be in an escrow account. So like that, they got a number of regulatory mechanisms so that the people who invest, especially the young people, in India, the youngsters invest a lot of money in property. I mean, by 27, normally 27, 28, a guy wants to own a small property for himself. And property is a very emotional issue in India. They will, as I keep mentioning this, they may not fight for their wife, but they'll fight for the property. So that is how we have grown. The second thing that they have done is that we have brought in a legislation and a lot of incentives in this affordable category of housing. You'll be surprised to know that this affordable category, for the poor people, the government gives some incentive, But the developers who take up this affordable category, even for the middle income group, because India has got the largest middle income group growing in the world. So even for them, the bank interest rates have been lowered, and also what they are doing for them is that the payment is made over about 25 to 30 years, so that you don't have to worry about that. And a number of controls have also been given. I mean, you just can't invest in the affordable category as a process for your future investment, or buy 10 of them or 20 of them as people normally do. So there's no need to do that, and you can just, there's certain rules and regulations. And what it has done is it has brought down the cost of land because of the increase in the number of constructions that is taking place in the affordable category. The cost of construction has come down. The third thing I want to tell you is a lot of importance is being given in India today for technology into the construction segment itself, which was basically it was lacking. And a lot of importance has been given, and with which even the developers feel that they can do it faster. In the affordable category, I want to tell you that the complete profit that the developer makes is tax-free. That is how they have encouraged. The government is not spending too much of money on this. The private sector is doing it. They are only saying that we'll provide you the requisite infrastructure in terms of water, electricity, and the road communication. So I think there is something to be taken out from this particular segment and then learn and maybe apply to the local rules. I want to tell you that we also were so badly stuck up with these laws for development in India. We had to get almost about 83 certifications before a project could be launched. Project launches take 2 years to start after you launch it. But today, we are doing it in 30 days. Of application, you get your approval in 30 days, it's online. So that is the kind of a revolution that we are seeing, and they opened up the market, including investment in this sector, and not being, and so a lot of foreign investment has come into this, and we are seeing some sea change. In the next 2 to 3 years, this this will change, and a lot of the importance has also been given to the seniors, about which I'll talk later in the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to pick up one point that you mentioned, and maybe ask Anindya, because you sit in Kadin too. One of the, we've talked about how we have a rising middle class, and coupled with that rising urbanization. And one of the issues, of course, is affordability. Can the young and the millennials actually afford property? And they need, people say, oh, well, they don't want to buy, but somebody's got to build it, somebody's got to finance it, Now, within Kadin and within the government, is there any discussion going on in terms of how can we enable the younger generation to actually afford homes, and the homes that you guys are building?
I think first, Pak Shoeb, before they can think about getting homes, we need to think about, for them to get jobs.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the current administration is trying hard to make sure that they can be involved in the working force sooner rather than later. And among others, what the president I see is focusing on is to make sure that the coin terms growth with equity. Now, what I mean by that is not only to the millennials, but also for the people in the regions, right? I think a little bit sidetrack to just give a little color. The president, I think, has been quite successful in the village development. The famous 1 billion per kabupaten development, which is basically putting in about 60 trillion rupiah of money to the kabupaten, about $4.5 billion. But instead of giving the money, it is the cash for work initiative. So they can build bridges, they can build a couple of buildings that they need for the community. But that kind of thing will help the money to trickle down to the people who really need. But it's almost like you give the bait, not the fish kind of thing. And the second thing also, maybe not specifically to millennials, is the KUR. I think it's still a good thing. It is 100 trillion rupiah money Because we spoke a little bit about democracy, this is also very important to make sure that sustainability of democracy exists and progress. But specifically for millennial, to me, I think the best way for them is to be in the workforce, but to give them incentive to also become entrepreneurs. Because, nothing is more needed, I think, in the country than more entrepreneurs. The numbers speak for itself. I think we have less than 1%, and the going rate is about 3-4%. I think those are the couple of things that we in Chambers of Commerce and Industry trying to push, right? To make sure that the growth is not only growing in the cities or in Java, but also to the region as well. And we are very happy to say that Chambers of Commerce is in all kabupaten or regions. And the second thing is to make sure that people can get jobs. But to get that, one, of course, the big businesses have to continue to grow, and a lot of things can be said about that. But I think making sure that they can keep innovation going and become entrepreneurs, that's another thing. Right.
Thank you. Any questions? Any more insights, comments? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Sean. I would like to ask Bakrie, how do you respond to the rising demand for millennials in a healthy living and affordable living? Thank you.
So the question is, how do you cater to millennials who want healthy living and affordable homes? So maybe Pak Darmono can answer that question.
Yeah, this is an interesting topic because the government, for popularity's sake, always want to build houses for the poor. Now, a millennial, of course, when they just finish school and then want to get jobs, then normally the wages is still low. And how can they afford to buy a house? So actually what the millennium or the young people need is a room to rent or an apartment to rent, not to own. But for the politician, of course, they always like to say, well, I provide houses for the mass, right? Which is contradictory with the reality. The people who will invest are the people with money. And they need ownership. They need HGB or hak milik. But the people who are just starting to work, they need homes without having to own it. So hak pakai lebih penting daripada hak milik, right, for the young people. But the people with money, they need to have the certificate in order for them to be able to get loan from the banks. Once it is clarified, I think if the Real Estate Association, Cardin and so on, try to push this to government, look, what it's needed really are the construction of many houses. And then the price will go down. And then people can rent. So that should be the policy. But it is not popular. But I hope together also with this forum, we can persuade Panis also, and also the committee of Real Estate Indonesia to keep pushing it to the government. That keep giving incentive, motivation for people who want to invest. And also let foreigners to buy. Because the discrepancy between the interest in Indonesia and overseas is so high. And also the cost here is also so different. So people will come to Indonesia if here there is even a small incentive. Now there is negative interest in Japan. So a lot of money actually are hanging around in the world. Let them come to Indonesia because there is an incentive here. And then our people, young, the millennium, can also enjoy affordable homes, not to own, but to live. Thank you.
I know it's not popular, but I think it's much needed. Anin, do you want to comment on that? Is that something that Kadin is even...
First of all, I'm learning. It sounds pretty good. Yeah. I think first you gotta be able to rent before you start incurring capex
right.
to buy. So looking forward to learn and work with all of you to focus on that. And also, I think that's a good thing to say. One, let's focus on helping the builders. Right? build a lot of developments, and the price will go down naturally, supply and demand, and that way the rental market can grow, and that's where millennials come in. Because one thing I can say, I would say single serving mentality or sachet mentality is also a mentality of millennials. So maybe to a certain extent that can also come to property by them renting the space rather than, and it can be a very good business.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of places in the world, in a developing country, in Europe, you know, dormitories, not only for students but also for, you know, young workers can be good. We just haven't seen one in Indonesia that is being developed in a very professional and also sizable way.
Thank you. Any more questions we have? Yes.
Yeah, I would like to ask a question to Pa Anin. Because recently we have so many discussion and talk about the zero down payment programs. How do Bakrie respond to this program? Because I believe that this program can also cater for these millennials for affordable housings. As for the average age for the people who own a property in Europe is around 38. What can we do better in Indonesia? And I think, how do you respond with that, the zero down payment programs?
Thank you. Maybe Pa Anin and maybe the other panelists can also answer that question.
Well, I guess I think I know the person who can answer is the one who campaigned for that. But I think from what I know, one, economically, we did little calculation. Unless the price of land is 2 million or so, it's quite hard to do down payment zero, you know, just economically. And the second thing, I guess from my understanding, the current governor and vice governor of Jakarta would like to structure the payment come down to zero by way of giving incentive to developers. This is my understanding. And because I think they know very well that a lot of the development going outside Jakarta, and that's good and bad, right? But they also would like to make sure that within Jakarta, you know, high-rise can also be built and progress. And the inclusion program is what they think about to make sure that not only the haves can be living in Jakarta, but also the people who start to come in to the picture, the middle class. But I think that's the current analysis. It's not easy, but I think it can be done. Because anyway, if the government is giving incentive, they do it all the time in terms of KLB, in terms of Fasum Fasos. It's not exactly the same, but I'm sure they can work something out. But yeah, it needs some creativity to be implemented. But the benefits should also be seen. If you can do that, people are going to be much more energized, closer to work. They build community. And I think that will help a lot for the city like Jakarta.
Thank you.
As we know, every 5 years, there's always a possibility change of government. And with the changing of the new government, it could be, there's a possibility of changing the new planning, also the new policy as well. So, such as like the infrastructure, the airport, and also the seaport, and etc. So my question is, as developer, how do you countermeasure for this situation?
Thank you. Maybe Pak Po, if you can answer that question, is Pak Anin, maybe all of you can answer. How do you deal with political uncertainty? I think everybody wants to know that, right? Pak Darmono, maybe you start first. How do you deal with political uncertainty?
Well, I think we have to be close to everybody. But practically, I think you don't do something which is the race is more than 5 years. Right? So you do something which the current administration, for example, can support. That's one way. Well, another way, you do something very, very big. But you need to have a consortium. You have a lot of shareholders in that area, which consists of people from different walk of life, or different parties, or different, there are some academics, some businessmen, there are some from government. If you can form that consortium, I think it's safe enough to say that after 5 years, the next government will still the people are also within the consortium. This is if we want to do something big. Although I started in 1989 with a lot of friends, that was during the time when there was no true democracy, but still the danger was there for a large project. So I started with 21 shareholders when we started Jababeka in 1989. So that's why we've been able to sustain that long, although this is actually something which is very sensitive. We purchase a lot of land for many people, we build infrastructure, we build all sorts of things, which is actually supposed to be government shop. But having so many support from different people, then it is the way to go on. So collaboration is the way to do it. And I like to also to introduce this one. I've been saying this many times. There are two types of KKN. One is the negative, one is the positive one. The negative, of course, is the collusion, corruption, and nepotism. But there is the positive one, which is communication, collaboration, and networking. This is networking. So through networking, we build communication, and then we can build collaboration. Because without collaborating with government, with the academics, then how can we get good regulation? How can we get protection, inverted commas? But if we have the accommodation to communicate with the mass, with the public, then people understand actually what we are doing is for the benefit of the people. It's good for everybody. And there is a limit, there is regulation which we observe. But at the same time, we also persuade government, look, with this kind of regulation, it's not going to work. So you have to change regulation. And this communicated by the academics. So this is a long shot, but it can be done because I've done it. Thank you.
Thank you. So get as many people involved in your project as possible. Thank you. I think really this debate between allowing foreigners to buy property, I think it's not just Indonesia. Many countries grapple with this because they need to protect the nationals. But I think Darmono has rightly pointed out, there are many models out there in the world that we can use. Yes, Pak Marcus.
Hi, I'm Marcus from Singapore. I would like to direct the questions to Pak Anindya Bakrie. Yes, as we all know that the millennials today are all about technology, Facebook, Instagram, and of course FaceTimes, WeChat, WhatsApp. And as the years goes by, we'll have more post-millennium than pre-millennium. That means as the generation grows younger and younger. Yeah. Is our technology today in the cities of Indonesia ready for them? Do we have enough infrastructures? 4G, 5G, 6G, 7G. Is the government preparing for that to happen? Thank you, sir.
Anin?
Thank you. Because if Pak Marcus asked me about property, he would know better. But look, it's a big question, right? Whether we are ready for the technology, whether in the city or in the country, to accommodate this younger generation. I think the blueprint is there. I think the current Minister of Infocom has the blueprint. He came from the business sector. But like anything else, I think the issue will be in the execution, because a lot of stakeholders come into play. Yeah. But the first and foremost, I think, is the availability of internet, because everybody's already talking about Internet of Things, Internet of Everything and everything. And that has a lot to do with CAPEX, because all the telco operators have to invest a lot. But even if they want to invest a lot, the management of frequency has to be correct, and all the way to making sure that all the towers are being managed rightly in the cities. But I believe in one thing, if the consumers are ready, I think the technology, the market, the regulations will follow. Just back 10 years ago, I used to be in the telecom business. And what we were very proud of is to sell a 2G phone that can actually read, in this case, a Quran or Injil, right? Which now everybody can do with any phone, right? This is 10 years ago. So it shows that how in 10 years, if the technology is not there, people will build it. I think the regulation will follow, and business people will invest. And also another thing to think about is that Indonesians are very well connected globally, right? So that means a lot of the big players, in fact, my argument would be a lot of the big players are here so fast that the local players may not be able to respond. I mean, we all know about the Google of the world, 95% probably, and then Alibaba of the world. I think they also bring a lot of benefits in it. But what we also have to think about is not only how to make sure that the consumers are benefited with this proliferation of technology, but also how young entrepreneurs, the millennials, can take part of it, somewhere in the ecosystem. Yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions? We still have a bit of time for one or two more questions.
Hi, maybe to relate a bit with technology. Technology is progressing really fast, and real estate and property is a bit on the slow side of things. How do you recommend millennials or investors or developers to accommodate for the fast-changing technology that's going to happen in the world?
Thank you. Maybe, Pak Po, if you can answer this question. In your property is a long-term development, but technology is changing very fast. So how do you incorporate technology into your property developments and to ensure that, the people, the millennials or whoever your consumers or customers are, will continue to enjoy the latest technology?
Ya, memang satu perumahan itu tidak luput dari new technology. Tentunya sangat cepat perubahannya teknologi. Jadi untuk membangun satu properti yang benar-benar bisa ditimbang sama pembelinya, tentunya kita harus set up satu teknologi department khusus untuk menganalisa dan menerapkan sistemnya kan. Kira begitu perusahaan kita.
Terima kasih. Yes, sir. Sorry, di sini Pak.
Ya, selamat siang. Saya dengan Petrus dari Petra Property. Ini pertanyaan buat Pak Darmono ya. Bapak kan sudah dari tahun 1989 di dunia properti, mengalami juga krisis yang cukup panjang. Beberapa kali sudah lewat ya. Nah di tahun ini kan juga kita kondisinya agak slow gitu ya. Dan juga ke depan dalam tahun depan, yang mau saya tanyakan adalah bagaimana Pak Darmono menyikapi untuk penjualannya di tahun ini dan ke depannya. Strategi apa yang mungkin Bapak bisa share ya supaya penjualan itu bisa lebih bagus, dan ditambah lagi kan dengan adanya banyak investor atau developer dari asing yang masuk juga. Kira-kira strategi apa yang menurut Bapak yang terbaik yang bisa dilakukan untuk sebagai pemain lokal? Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Ya,
Pak Darmono.
Ya, ini pertanyaan yang mungkin pas buat penutup kali Pak. Jadi memang saat ini itu bunga bank kan terus turun. Uang itu sebenarnya banyak sekali. Jadi saat inilah saatnya invest. Barang-barang begitu murah. Properti sekarang begitu murah. Tinggal yang diperlukan adalah inovasi dalam segala bidang. Jadi kalau saat ini kita tuh mau berpikir dengan benar dan berinovasi, ini saatnya invest. Karena saat ini semua orang takut invest. Investlah waktu orang lain tidak invest. Sebab ya dalam bahasa Inggris orang bilang, invest when there is blood on the road. Dan ini saatnya, mungkin akan suasana akan lebih panas dengan menjelang pemilu ini, akan lebih panas lagi. Tapi ini menurut saya saat yang paling tepat buat investasi. Kira-kira menjawab itu.
Thank you. I think there's another saying that invest when there's blood on the street, and you need a stomach of iron to invest when there's blood on the street. Pak Anin, you want to add anything? Pak Po, you want to add anything? Maybe we can wrap up the panel then. Anyone? No one? Okay, so maybe we wrap up the panel just by going around and maybe give us 2 or maybe 3 things that you think will affect the property sector going forward. 3 factors in your mind. So not just in the next 1 year, but maybe a little bit longer term, in the next 5 years, let's say, that you think will affect the property sector in Indonesia. Maybe we start with Pak Anin.
Yeah. I think first, I cannot maybe come up with 3, but first, I think whether the development in the country will be going horizontal or vertical. That's also very important. Number 2, I think whether the connectivity that the government is saying between the islands and the infrastructure is really happening or not. Because if it's happening, then you start to believe that in the regions of Indonesia, you will get the kind of developments that you see in Java. And maybe number 3, this is what everybody's talking right now, whether the millennials are being served or not. Because this has a lot of consequences, social-politically, economically, if they're not being served. So those are the couple of building blocks, I think, that can change the future.
Thank you, Pak Anin. Pak Po?
Untuk 5 tahun yang akan datang ini, mungkin juga masa-masa pemilu, kita akan menghadapi suatu kelangkaan dan satu pasaran yang agak sepi. Tapi saya percaya setelah pemilu ini, market akan segera membaik. Karena kalau dibandingkan harga properti di Indonesia dengan Singapura, dengan Hong Kong, dengan manapun di negara Asia sini, Indonesia boleh termasuk yang masih murah sekali. Saya kira untuk investasi di Indonesia setelah pemilu ini akan semua berlomba-lomba dan pasaran properti saat itu saya percaya pasti akan lebih bagus. Apalagi kita selalu mengikuti teknologi baru yang sesuai dipakai oleh orang umum. Karena masih sangat murah kalau kita memandang di Indonesia. Maka itu jangan khawatir, investasilah properti kita.
Terima kasih Pak. Pak Darmono?
Ya, ada beberapa hal di sini yang mungkin perlu disimak. Satu adalah contoh Mekarta. Mekarta menjatuhkan harga demikian rupa. Per meter persegi biasanya bangunan itu 8,7 juta rupiah untuk high-rise building. Sekarang dijual oleh Mekarta 6,7 juta rupiah. Ini satu fenomena baru di mana cost itu bisa ditekan demikian rupa dengan teknologi dan kolaborasi dengan luar negeri. Dan ini saya kira akan ditiru oleh banyak developer. Di banyak daerah akan terjadi pembangunan seperti Mekarta yang akan menurunkan harga properti dan menambah jumlah banyak. Kedua, yang kita lihat juga adalah teknologi dari IT ini viral kemana-mana, sehingga penjualan properti tidak terbatas untuk Indonesia. Yang saya dengar Mekarta, yang beli 15% dari Jakarta, 20% dari Bekasi, dan 65% dari seluruh Indonesia, mungkin luar negeri. Nah, ini fenomena yang kita mesti simak dan boleh diikuti, bagaimana merubah landscape daripada property business di Indonesia. Cara LIPO ini betul-betul breakthrough yang menarik, yang harus dipelajari. Mungkin nggak usah tiru 100%, amati, tiru, dan modifikasi. Saya kira akan merubah pertumbuhan properti di Indonesia dan sangat membantu menciptakan ekonomi buat Indonesia dan menciptakan lapangan kerja yang banyak. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Pak. Can you please all join me in thanking the panel?